Hello everyone and welcome to another Premier Injuries Daily Roundup. The FA Cup is almost done. I say almost because we still have West Ham to play on Monday night and we're already looking ahead to game week 22, a double game week at that. And also, don't forget, kick-off on Friday evening brings that FPL deadline forward just a touch. So, where to start? Like I say, I try to keep some semblance to today's injury update. And we'll go back to Friday where Manchester City took on Arsenal in that fourth round tie. Now, a couple of injury updates here. First and foremost, Thomas Partey. He took a whack to the ribs. He was removed as a precautionary measure. Mikel Arteta said that the midfielder was in discomfort. That was getting worse and worse as that first half progressed. Thankfully, initial scans have come back fairly clear, fairly positive. They show no serious injury to those ribs. So there's an outside chance and it remains hopeful that he will be available for this weekend. For Manchester City, John Stones, he was forced off with another hamstring-related issue. He's been hampered throughout this campaign due to muscular problem. This is the latest in a setback. He had just returned to the City first team in recent times. Now we know high re-injury, high recurrence rates. So we're looking at another spell on the sidelines, unfortunately, for the City centre-back. A touch of transfer news as well. João Cancelo looks as if he's probably on his way to Bayern Munich, according to David Ornstein, on loan with an option to buy. And that's believed to be in the region of around about 70 million. João Cancelo has fallen from favour in recent times, and there's talk about a breakdown in relations with Pep, and also the club hierarchy believe that they have enough cover in that back line, to be able to accommodate the loss of João Cancelo, the emergence of Rico Lewis. You can also see Ake moving out to that left-hand side. So plenty cover in there. Well, it remains to be seen. Like you see, we have just over 24 hours of that latest transfer deadline window still remaining. For Tottenham, Richarlison, he was ruled out of the FA Cup game at the weekend. Now, that was described as Stellini, the assistant coach, as a small issue, not related to the hamstring, which is good news. This was groin related. It was an adductor problem. He did train ahead of the game, but they decided not to push him too hard given his recent return. Didn't want to take any risks, so he should be absolutely fine. We do expect a quick return for him. Harry Kane, he was an unused substitute from the bench. He had been feeling a little bit unwell. He had some illness following that win at Craven Cottage against Fulham on the Monday night. But again, he was just rested as a precaution. Step up Heung-min Son, grabs himself 2 goals, takes on that mantle. So all good in the Spurs camp, although a very difficult fixture this weekend against Manchester City. For Brighton, just when it seemed as if we had our eyes on an in-form £4.6 million striker in Evan Ferguson, it looks as if the striker could be set for a spell on the sidelines. He was a receiving end of a pretty nasty tackle from Liverpool midfielder Fabinho. Again, the extent of which is currently unknown. We'd probably have to wait maybe 24 to 48 hours until we have the results of imaging to determine the severity of that problem. Roberto De Zerba played down the incident, which the Brazilian received a yellow card for, which was probably not to be expected. I haven't seen video footage. Like I say, it didn't look great. We just hope that Ferguson isn't sidelined too long. Danny Welbeck is back in contention. In fact, the Seagulls started with both players at the weekend there against Liverpool on Sunday. That was in a 4-2-3-1 with Ferguson leading that line and Welbeck playing in a slightly deeper role, and that's probably because of the absence of Alan Lallana. Lallana suffered a muscle problem, and that's probably going to keep him out again for another couple of weeks. For Manchester United, we've seen their result against Reading. Unfortunately, progressing through to the 5th round came at a little bit of a cost when Christian Eriksen was on the receiving end of a nasty Andy Carroll tackle. He tried to continue, but ultimately lasted less than a minute before Erik ten Hag made that substitution. Now, Eriksen left Old Trafford on crutches with his ankle in a protective cast. Didn't look great, but what I would stress at this point, or certainly at the point when he left the stadium, it's not always as it seems. Those protective lightweight cam boosts are often applied more of a precautionary measure until they get a better understanding of what's going on in that ankle. Like I say, we're due a scan on Monday to determine again the severity of that problem. Recent examples, you can look at Newcastle, Brazilian midfielder Bruno Guimaraes. Again, he was a player that was forced off at half-time, although he did manage to complete the remainder of that first half against Fulham, left the stadium on crutches and in a protective boot, but then returned the following weekend. So fingers crossed that Christian Eriksen will be back sooner rather than later. Had a lot of questions as well with regards to Diego Dalot, asking about his hamstring problem. Erik ten Hag hasn't been very forthcoming in providing a lot of updates on the fullback who suffered a recent recurrence of that hamstring problem that kept him out following his return post-World Cup. Now, typically, when we're talking about re-injuries, we're talking about maybe a lengthier spell on the sidelines than that originally injury occurred. So having spent around about 3 weeks on the sidelines initially, we're probably going to look way beyond that. So that maybe is an indication that we could be looking at maybe a very small outside chance of game week 22, or maybe more realistically, probably going into game week 23 and beyond. Again, that's the severity is undetermined at this point, but that just gives us a little bit of a guidance on where we should be at this moment in time. For Leeds, lost the questions on the absence of Gonotto at the weekend. I hope I've got that right. I probably haven't. The in-form Leeds winger has been attracting a lot of attention, but his absence from the matchday squad at the weekend caused a lot of concerns. Thankfully, that was due to suspension, nothing else. He actually picked up 2 cautions in the game against Cardiff, home and away, so that's why he was suspended for that. It was great to see Patrick Bamford. He managed to complete 75 minutes for Leeds United. Great news for Jess March, who said that the striker was absolutely exhausted, but very happy having able to get through that. Luis Sinisterra back on the score sheet again. He's been a player that was injured since pre-World Cup, since prior to the restart, and that was that foot problem, that Liz Frank injury, highly unusual. Took a little bit longer than first anticipated, but back in the groove and gets himself a goal. However, those who are maybe interested in bringing in the team, only 1 double-digit return, and I think 2 returns during that first half of the campaign. So certainly, although performances did look decent on the eye, flattered to deceive a little bit in terms of FPL points, and certainly wasn't picking up any, pulling up any trees with regards to that. For Leicester City, Brendan Rodgers, he confirmed that James Maddison, that was a tactical withdrawal at the weekend. We know that he's coming off the back of that, well, various issues with that knee, both anterior and posterior issues, which are hopefully over and done with now. He's back in the groove in terms of training, so every day he's getting a little bit better, but certainly in terms of that match fitness and sharpness, there's a little bit of work to do there, so that's why he was brought off. But I think he certainly puts himself in contention for a start this weekend. At the top of the show, I mentioned that West Ham do have an FA Cup tie against Derby County on Monday night. If you missed it, if you shut down, post FPL and wanted this weekend off, you may not have heard that Danny Ings picked up a knee problem on his debut for the Hammers. He's had an injection in that knee. And again, we don't have a definitive timeline on when the new January signing will be back. David Moyes remains hopeful that it's not too long. Gianluca Scamacca also has an outside chance of return this way. And if it's not this weekend, we're probably looking at the weekend after against Chelsea. Of course, West Ham playing Newcastle this week. Again, that's a knee issue. That's flared up. David Moyes isn't overly concerned with regards to this. And like I say, it could be maybe somewhere between 7 and 14 days before he's back. Certainly not available for the FA Cup. For Maxwell Cornet, this is a calf issue that's been stretched back to the game against Wolves. setback after setback. He's due to return to West Ham on Monday. He spent around about 3 to 4 weeks in France, I think it was in Paris, getting injections and trying to remedy the underlying problems which is causing this issue. Now, David Moyes, when speaking on Friday, said he doesn't really know what type of condition Maxwell Cornet will be in, whether he's going to be ready to resume first team training with the group from Monday or not. Even if he does, the likelihood is that we're probably still 2 to 3 weeks away from being in first team contention fully. Of course, he's missed such a massive amount of time. He's going to need to put himself in with a good chance in terms of building up that sharpness. And also, we're expecting to be without Kurt Zouma. He suffered an injury in that upper quad. There's been a lot of fluid in and around that joint, around the hip, really high up again, suggests that there's been some kind of tear, the extent of which is to be determined. So it's suffice to say it looks as if Kurt Zouma's out of that. And again, if you missed it, Craig Dawson, he's now left the club. He's went to Wolves. So that's it for now. Of course, we're going to have lots of updates between now and that FPL deadline on Friday. So as always, keep following. You can always check out premierinjuries.com, the injury table, or drop us any messages in the comments box below or on Twitter at Ben Dinnery. That's it for now.